Hello, and a very happy 18th of Vlogmas to you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Today, instead of mainly focusing up here on this guy, we're going to take a visit to an unsung hero of both my Twitch stream and many of my YouTube videos. That's right. My shelf. So, there was a question earlier in the Vlogmas. Hey, Adam, what's all that shit on your shelves? I want to see your books. Let's see your figures. So, in sacrifice to you, this morning I took all of this shit off my shelf, dusted everything in preparation for what I hope to be the ultimate Adam's Shelf video. And if you stick around until the very end, I got a couple of secret bonus caches of nerd shit that I want to show you. So, enough of this, more of this, let's get started. The shelves themselves aren't anything special. They're just some old 4x4 IKEA shelves, and I cannot remember the name of them. I want to say Kallax, maybe? Ingvar? Bjornstein? I don't actually know. They're just IKEA shelves. I have two sets of them. The taller shelves on the left I bought last year when I moved in, and the other shelves on the right have moved with me through at least 4 or 5 different moves. These shelves are probably a decade old now. They have served me well to hold my shit. Most of the top of the shelf is used to hold Nendoroids. Nendoroids are these little guys, figures that are based on video games, anime, manga. They're basically a much fancier version and much more Japanese version and much more posable version of the Funko Pop figures, of which you'll see a few later. I started collecting these Nendoroids ages and age ago, back in 2013 when I was in Japan. This little fella right here with the big sword protecting my copies of The Burning Wheel is the first Nendoroid I ever owned. I bought it in Japan at the Capcom store, and it is a Monster Hunter Nendoroid. I'm not sure which Monster Hunter this set came from. I was only really getting into the series when I was there, and I picked it up because he had a big sword, and he was wearing cool dragon armor, which I think is probably enough. It's actually not the only Monster Hunter Nendo that I have. I have the female Legambi armor, which you saw in the previous shot. This is about as close as I get to posing any of these Nendoroids. I guess I could do some kind of like diorama, but honestly, I just like posing the individual figures and having them up on my shelf. You can see that I kind of ran out of flat space up front, so there's a copy of, I think, Mage 20th Anniversary Edition and 3rd Edition Exalted, as well as Undying, looks like Masks, and another book back there holding up Aegis, and you can see Madoka just peeking out through the back behind Link there. Up in the back here, hiding behind all the Nendos, is a piece of fan art that was given to me, I think at Gen Con. It's by Victoria Leader, and it's a rare peaceful moment for everybody's favorite Balalaika playing Death Cleric, Dr. Grigori. Now, I get a lot of fan art of my characters, but it's almost always delivered in digital form. This is really special to me because it's a hand-done pencil drawing. Up front here are a couple of the Overwatch Nendos. You'll notice that even though I hate Tracer, I bought the Tracer Nendo because it's just too damn cute. It was also, I think, the first Overwatch one, and I really wanted to get it. The Diva one might be my favorite, but the Mercy's pretty cool too. I put Mei up front because she's literally the devil, and you don't fuck with Satan. Also, if you take a look on the left, you can see Tomoe Mami pointing a gun at her. So I think it's pretty clear how I feel about these characters. Now, these Madoka figures, of which I have a full set, they're not actually Nendoroids. These are Kupoche figures. I bought these in Japan as well. I picked up the Madoka one first, and the others kind of later on my first and second trips back to Japan. I like these because they're a little bigger than the Nendoroids, and they're more posable. I wish that there were more Kupoche figures, but honestly, the Madoka ones are the only ones I ever had any interest in. On the less chibi end of the scale, I have a couple of Figma figures. These are more realistically designed. I don't like them quite as much. I like the weird deformed Nendoroids, I think, better. There are a few Figma that I really like. These are them. So this is Chie. We've got the Major. There's the Hunter from Bloodborne in the back there, and you can just make out the top of Aegis's rocket launcher. Rounding out the top of the shelf, we've got a Snorkin Labbit figure with a really unsettling Morgana hat. There's Aegis there. Charizard, and then, of course, This big green veiny boy, who if you're interested in him, Demon Lord Mara has his own unboxing video. It's a whole thing. I'm sorry you had to look at this. Starting off in the top left compartment, I have an Evil Dead Deadite figure. That's on the left there, that's a Skeletor looking guy. He is a Funko Pop, and he's way too top heavy. His head keeps bending over. He's broken off the post several times. I don't like him very much, but he's such a badass. Look at that angry face. The next two figures, I think the next three actually, are all Kid Robot figures. You're going to see these little rabbits a few more times. They're called Dunnies. They're old collector figures from like the early 2000s. I collected a bunch of them back then. So there's a little ape ghost guy. There's a Castle Crasher. I actually have a full set of 4 of these, but the green one's my favorite, so he gets to stay out on this shelf. And then at the end, there's a bunny being eaten by a dinosaur, which is another one of the Dunnies. And in the back, I have a card containing snake facts from my dear friend Paul. And above that, copies of Dungeon World in English, Korean, Spanish. Downstairs, I also have a copy of German Dungeon World, but I haven't had a chance to put it on the shelf yet. There's a Portuguese copy floating around too. There's a bunch of other Powered by the Apocalypse stuff here. You can see Truncheon World, Dungeon Planet, a bunch of Johnstone Metzger stuff, Urban Shadows, World in Peril, both versions of Monster Hearts, and Monster of the Week. Nestled safely away in compartment number 2, we find 2 more Funko Pop figures. We got a Fallout figure, and we got old Uncle Scrotor, the mutant from This Island Earth. And then over on the left, you can see Adam Jensen, a brown duck, and a Murloc. Now that brown duck, I have no idea where I got that from. I think a fan gave it to me, or I got it in the mail. But for some reason, it just completely slipped my mind why I have it on the shelf. And then in the back, I've got copies of Apocalypse World, Sagas of the Icelanders, copy of Maid, the Marvel Heroic role-playing game. I got Tenra, a bunch of other indie games. This is where I'm keeping all my Japanese translation games. And down at the end, Torchbearer and Blades in the Dark. We have a guest visiting from Street Fighter. That's Vega on the left there. That's a Kid Robot figure of Vega. 3 more Dunnies, including my favorite one, the one in the skull mask there. And they're all standing around a piece of fake sushi that I bought from a wax food store in Japan. This is a thing, if you've ever been to a Japanese restaurant that has these wax foods outside, there's a district in Tokyo where they make all of them, and that's where I got that from. And then on the right, obviously there's our Peach, looking hot. Take a look at the back, you can see some more indie RPGs, including Sorcerer, Night Witches, and more. Also, there's a copy, if you look right here, of Free Market, right here. This guy, Free Market, which is a pretty rare game to come by. It's a Jared Sorensen and Luke Crane game, and I love it. I never get to play it, but it is a fantastic design. Lastly, I've got a photo that a friend took for me of a black vulture to quote-unquote remind me of death, and a little birthday note from Dave that came with a copy of the Persona 5 art book that he gave me for my birthday last year. Speaking of gifts, this severed baby's head with an upside-down cross on its forehead was sort of a gift from Nadja and Blue Jay. That's Miro. You may have seen him in Blue Jay's channel. He has his own emote on Twitch. And then behind him is a painting that Echo did of Griffin. So that's really cute. I've had that on my shelf forever. If you take a look in the front, there's a little knit Squirtle and a scary Funko from Hannibal. Books-wise in the back, I've got my old school Warhammer Fantasy books, an old copy of RuneQuest, the only Palladium book that I own, the TMNT, and then a bunch of OSR stuff from various authors. On the left on this shelf is, of course, Galactus. Glorious Galactus, Destroyer of Worlds. There's a Coke bottle with my name on it that I got at TwitchCon the first or second year that it happened. A couple more Kid Robot figures. That's Zaph Brannigan and Homer. And then Arthur, King of the Britons. He doesn't care if you voted for him or not. And then behind it, a collection of role-playing games that I'm actually pretty proud of. So these are all my AD&D and basic Dungeons & Dragons books. I'm going to move Galactus here. Let's take a closer look. Right, so these are all basic D&D books, the Rules Cyclopedia, a bunch of very good condition advanced D&D books, These are the books that I learned on, actually. And then a full set of the Orange Spine books, as well as a collection of adventures down at the end. I'm actually really proud of this collection. There's a ton of really good stuff in here. Old adventures, cool D&D books from the ancient past, and then a bunch of copies of the basic rules set. Continuing on the D&D collection, you can see in the background we've moved through first edition and into second. So there's a player's handbook and dungeon master's guide, another monster manual. I've got the older of the two second edition books there, as well as some of the newer stuff like the skills and powers and combat and tactics books, which were fucking terrible. There's a whole bunch of other second edition stuff, only the stuff that I really wanted to keep. There's a bunch more of this probably at my parents' house in a box somewhere. This shelf has my favorite Dungeons & Dragons supplement, which is this guy right here, Faiths and Avatars. Faiths and Avatars is my favorite Forgotten Realms D&D book, and I love it to death. It's corny, the art is terrible, but it still has a place in my heart, and that's purely nostalgia. And then up front, of course, is Mega Man, Rush, the little security guy whose name I can never remember, a very pink Batman, and Locutus of Borg. I think that's Dr. Light. And then next to him, there's a London-themed rain dunny. And behind that, you can just barely make out a little... I'm going to grab him. Here, come here, buddy. Here we go. Little spray paint ghost. This is a Super Famicom version of Final Fantasy VI, which I have purely because I like Final Fantasy VI so much. And behind that, you can see all the purple books, many of the Mage books. You can see I've got books from second and revised. As well, over on the side, some of my Dungeons & Dragons books. Now, these are the books that I don't use very often because, for the most part, I have their content in Roll20. I don't really look at the D&D books that often. There's another pile of D&D books in my room that I reference more than these ones. But every once in a while, I'll have to jump up and grab them, so it's good to have them at hand. To finish off this row, I have the rest of my Mage books and the unmistakable weird pink-orange color of Hunter, the Reckoning. So this is one of my favorite series of White Wolf books. I've got the Storyteller's Guide, the Player's Guide, the core book, and then all of the Hunter books and a few other supplements. This game was really cool because it was about basically people with weird powers they couldn't totally control and very, very different ideas about what to do with them. It was a pretty fun game, and I'd actually love to go back and play it again. I thought it was quite cool. And then at the end, the Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars games, as well as a copy of Star Wars the Role-Playing Game, revised, expanded, and updated, the fan version that I got a Lulu print of. Up front, I would like to draw your attention to this adorable dragon. This dragon was a gift. I believe he's a Beanie Baby. It was a gift for me from a fan, and they let me know that this dragon in particular was quite special to them as a kid, and they were giving him over to me to take care of, so that's really, really cool. So I'm protecting them with, I think that's Jim Raynor. God, I'm a bad StarCraft fan. Or no StarCraft fan at all, really. I just think he's cool. And then on the left, don't forget to take a nice close look at Ken from Street Fighter and Zangief with a Bidoof on his head. Down here, spilling out of the third row, it's Gojira. So that's a Gojira Funko Pop. Two more Kid Robot figures. Another Dunny, which I think is a Junko Mizuno Dunny, and another one of the spray can figs. And then in the back, probably the only game I own every single book for. This is White Wolf's Exalted. It is one of my top favorite role-playing games of all time. I probably know the setting better than any other. And if you're a fan of Court of Swords, you will have recognized Exalted's fingerprints all over it. This is a really cool series, super neat game, and it was fun to watch it evolve through its various editions. Now, I own, but haven't played the third edition of it, but I go back to these books all the time for inspiration and just to check out all the great art. Out back, there's a few more Exalted books, just a couple. This is a second full block full of them. We move into second edition here and continue to collect this game. But up front, it's a Funko version of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I bought this because one day I was trying to find on eBay an old Stay Puft Marshmallow Man toy that I remember from when I was a kid. It was like my favorite toy as a kid, and I just couldn't find one. So I bought myself this as a consolation prize. I always love this big white goof. And then on the left is a mask that I got from Blizzard from a party at TwitchCon 2 years ago, where everybody was assigned a villain. So this is my Arthas mask. I think it's Arthas, right? Lich King, maybe? Necromancer? I don't know, it doesn't say. It's some fucking Blizzard, some Blizzard skull. Anyway, it's cool, so I kept it. Speaking of Blizzard, it's too soon, Executus. Too soon. So here's Ragnaros, and right next to Ragnaros, the alien queen from Aliens. I actually really like this Funko quite a lot. I think they did some cool stuff with their bigger Funkos. The small ones are a little bit generic sometimes, but the big ones are quite cool. And then, of course, in the back, a bunch more Exalted books. And then finally, at the very end, at the end of the Exalted stuff, you can see I've got a copy of Shadows of Esterin and 2 Pendragon books. Shadows of Esterin is a cool game. Well, it's a cool art book. Pendragon, always a classic. I love Pendragon. Super cool. Rounding out the row is my copy of Mother 2, Super Famicom version of Mother 2, aka Earthbound. There is Dr. Zaius, a glow-in-the-dark creepy man, and a Smorkin Labbit television. And then behind them, and I'm sorry, Mother, you can see copies of Wraith, the Oblivion. You can also see In Nomine, Fate, Unknown Armies, and Eclipse Phase. All right, we are beginning the bottom row, full on, right down near the floor. In this section, you can see DCC, Transylvanian Adventures, my first edition copy of Shadowrun, The Old Stars Without Number, and over here, this dusty bad boy. This is probably the oldest role-playing game that I own. This is a copy of Traveler, which is the first sci-fi RPG, one of the earliest non-Dungeons & Dragons games. This is a first edition, and I love it. It's not in great shape, but I don't really care about that. I've read every little book in there a bunch of times. Coming back over on this side, we have the One Ring. We've got a bunch of Dark Ages Vampire, Dark Ages Fae, Dark Ages Mage. I always kind of liked the Dark Ages setting for White Wolf. I thought it was pretty cool. There's some Promethean and Changeling books there, and a full set of Orpheus, which was White Wolf's kind of post-Wraith ghost RPG. And that game was cool because it has a single meta plot that runs through all the books. So you'd start and make characters with Orpheus, and then you'd play through essentially a series of adventures, but as the adventures go, the game changes. It's like a paranormal ghost hunting game at the beginning, but becomes so much more by the end. It's pretty cool. Worth checking out if you can get your hands on a PDF. All of this stuff I pretty much picked up when I worked in a comics and games store. All the New World of Darkness stuff, anyway. When all this was coming out, like Geist and Hunter the Vigil and Vampire the Requiem, I was working in a game store in Victoria, a games and comics store in Victoria, and I just picked them up as they came in, read them, and then never really played them. We played a tiny bit of Vampire the Requiem, but not much else. On the left is a bunch of Demon the Fallen books, and I think Demon got a new edition recently. I just really like biblical shit, so I thought it was kind of a cool game. Again, a game that I played maybe once or twice, but not much, and certainly not recently. And finally, Vampire. Never let anyone say that my opinion about this game is not well informed, because I've read and played all of these revised books, including Kindred of the East. There's also a couple of copies of 20th Anniversary Vampire, Vampire Dark Ages 20th Anniversary, and hiding over here is the OG troop game about wizards, Ars Magica. Up on top of this shelf, you can see very clearly a Star Destroyer. In the back there, we got a Bulbasaur. Because it's important to have more than one Bulbasaur, that's what you're looking at. Right next to him is a microphone that I'm not using. You can tell by the little fluffy dead cat filter. A couple of hard drives, some video games, some GM notebooks, and next to that are my foreign language RPGs. So there's several Japanese RPGs there, including Nova, The Acceleration, Make You Kingdom, and one whose name I cannot remember. Next to that is Praedor, which is a Finnish RPG, and then Nobilis, an RPG that was written in English but might as well be in a foreign language. There's Dark Souls and Mega Man art book right next to that. Gloriously decorating this shelf is my Blade Runner replica pistol. Behind that, a full run of both Akira and Queen and Country. There's actually only one of two sets of Akira I have. And then next to that is Lord of the Logos. It's a book about black metal logo design, and then the Dark Souls 2 guide. There's some dice on this shelf as well, a set of metal level up dice, and then up top, you can see right there, up top is a vault containing my black on black obsidian level up dice in a wormwood vault. Because even if I don't roll dice, it's cool to have the most pretentious dice in town. Miscellaneous comics and art books adorn this shelf, and you can see there's a third knitted Pokemon starter sitting on top of 2 volumes of Lone Wolf and Cub, which is amazing. If you haven't read it, read the hell out of that book. Over on the far right is the Persona 5 book that I was talking about before, that art book, and a Bloodborne art book, both of which are totally awesome. Finally, down at the bottom, there is the 10-year Mouse Guard art book, a bunch of Japanese game guides, volumes 1 and 3 of Uzumaki for some reason, an old version of the Mouse Guard RPG, and a shit ton of Attack on Titan manga. I don't know. I have no idea. Down below, and I'm not going to bother showing you this, is a basket full of old notebooks. Filled-in GM notebooks, yearly planners, that kind of thing, just in case I need to go back and look at my notes. So that's all the stuff that makes up the background of most of my streams, if I'm not green screened. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at it. Thanks for coming, and we'll be back tomorrow with more vlog action. So thanks for sticking it out, and we'll see you then. Now, listen, not all of my books can go on my shelf. They don't all fit, and sometimes I just need to have some close at hand. Just like a few books. Just a couple. Just a few, alright? Books that I need to be reading at any given moment. Reference material. It's fine. And then there's the stuff you just don't think you're ever gonna look at ever again. But you can't get rid of it, because, you know, maybe you will. Maybe you will look at it. So you just hide it away somewhere and try not to think about it. Yeah, sure. It's fine. I don't have a problem. You have a problem. Leave me alone.